Welcome in this video, which is part of a MOOC on landscape resilience done in the framework of ResAlliance project. In this specific video, I will present you a solution implemented in Cyprus in the sector of forestry. So my name is Mathieu Jost. I've been working in water and risk management for the past 20 years. And in the two last years, I've been working on the ResAlliance project in CERIDES, which is a center of expertise in risk and decision science, part of European University, Cyprus. So I'm going to present you three best practices which are implemented in Cyprus: prescribed burning, control grazing, and the participative tool, the serious game named Pure Police. We'll look to the actual situation on the way forward with recommendations from different stakeholders on how to better protect our forest area. Firstly, to present briefly Cyprus, you have an introductive video presenting the context. I give a quick look here on the forested area. So you have in green on the picture the public forest. So most of the forests in Cyprus are public and managed by the Department of Forest. That's non-productive forests, which are mostly resinous pine trees. One of the key issues for forest management around the Mediterranean and in Cyprus is land abandonment. So on this map, you have the density of tree, which is represented in green. So we could see that outside of the public forest, we still have a few forested area that will be also a focus for the practices that we'll present you. On this map, we put a 2-kilometer buffer around the public forest. Why? It's because actually the Department of Forest is in charge of prevention and suppression in this 2-kilometer zone in addition to the public forests. Outside of this limit, it will be the fire service in the Republic of Cyprus, meaning that it's not on the occupied territory in the north, neither the British bases. This brings us to the cooperation which is needed between the different stakeholders, but this is another topic we are not going to talk on this video. Wildfire is the main natural hazard which is threatening the forested area in Cyprus. You could see on this map the different wildfire occurrence with the possible cause, and also depending on the size of the dot, you will have the burnt area. In wildfire management, you have a key concept which is wild-urban interface. In Cyprus, where we have actually the forested area and the non-forested area, which are quite well separated, we would like to attract also on this idea of forested and non-forested interface. On the practices that we will present you after are key practice to be implemented in this area. Controlled burning in Cyprus. So the idea is how could we move from uncontrolled burning to a prescribed burning. It's a long process, and we want to present you here a few steps that we are starting to implement in Cyprus. We look to this Akamas National Park. We could see that actually in this zone there is a lot of fire which are happening close to. But if we look more at which season this wildfire occur, with this analysis, you could see, for example, in October and December, the blue dots are quite numerous. So we think that's a key issue to have a look also on the impact of this fire, depending on the period where they are implemented. We look to all Cyprus on the same database from 2010 to 2020. We could see that from January to April, most fires which occur are around the public forest. From May to September, it's going a bit further. When it's going to June and August, we have fires everywhere with burnt area, which are much more important. And if we go to October and November, then the fire have less impact. Looking to the number of fires from June to August included, we have 42% of the fire, which is the peak of the fire season. But if we look to the extended fire season from May to September, it will be 66%
of the wildfire occurrence. But if we look now to the agricultural cause, we could see that actually there is more fire from agricultural reason in May, June, October, and November. The impact, I would say, of this fire, the burnt area. You could see, of course, that the main impact is during the fire season from May to September. And if we looked outside of this fire season, there's only in October, November, where we still have very dry vegetation and having impact. So we made this mapping analysis to arrive to this last map, which is presenting the wildfire occurrence in Cyprus from October to April, meaning outside of the fire season. Here we have 34% of the wildfire occurrence, but only 12% of the area burned. And if we look to the wildfire recorded from agricultural activities, it's 50% of them which are during this period, so outside of the fire season. So the question is, how could we improve the use of fire? In this graphic, you could see there is a different use of fire, and today in Cyprus we are mainly in traditional burning, which are partly inappropriate as they are done during the fire season. So what we want to do is to move from this traditional burning to something which is more technical, more adequate, which is prescribed burning. First, that's more the perception of this prescribed burning that we have to change. So for this, we did different workshops with the different stakeholders involved, and we'll do in February 2025 a demonstration on prescribed burning. The goal is to do monitoring on the biodiversity on site before and after fire, after a few weeks, after a few months, to show that this practice is not sacrificing the forest, but could help also to regenerate. The idea is also that we could have a recommendation on how to make it better. So the goal is to communicate on the preventive use of fire to better protect the environment, which has been partly done already through an article in newspaper. Technically, I'm not going to present you prescribed burning. We have partners like Paul Costa Foundation, which will do this much better than me. So the first point, we need training in Cyprus. We need Department of Forest, the fire services, to be trained on this prescribed burning, and it's planned for 2025. We need also an adaptation of the legislation to have the possibility to implement better fire for prevention. We also plan to do a publication on the case study of Cyprus, especially to link the biodiversity with the preventive use of fire. And then, even maybe before, we also need to identify the strategic management area, meaning the area where specific management measures need to be implemented to reduce the fuel load. So we presented controlled burning, and now we will focus on controlled grazing, which is a similar approach. We want to move from uncontrolled grazing, and sometimes seen as overgrazing, to controlled grazing. It's a long transformative process, and we will present you the few actions we implemented to participate to this transformative process. The first forest law, enacted in 1913, put an end to the grazing inside the forest. Since that time, there was no major evolution in the legislation, which explain the map you have on the screen, with a strong disconnection between its boundary and the forest. So we have an inadequate legal framework that needs to be changed. But we have also a lack of shepherd and training opportunities, and limited financial support for these shepherds to implement controlled grazing. But in the meantime, we have a high demand for white cheese linked to the recent alumni certification, which is an opportunity to develop also controlled grazing. What is controlled grazing? Controlled grazing is basically silvopastoralism. So the aim is to reduce the fuel loads, so the dry vegetation in forests and in abandoned land, to have more open landscape with less intense wildfire. and it also gives opportunities for firefighters to better manage the wildfire. So here on the left picture, it's one experience of the Department of Forests with controlled grazing. We understood that controlled grazing in Cyprus, it's not happening widely today, but we want to highlight a few recommendations which have been given by the participants of the workshop we did in 2024 on controlled grazing to see how we could transfer the practices Spain, especially linked to the Fireflux project, to Cyprus. So first recommendation was to identify this wildfire strategic management area. We already talked about it. It's where do we need to focus to implement vegetation management practices. The second one was develop supportive policy on legislation. We already talked about it. That's an important point. Today, it's not possible to do controlled grazing in the forest, so it needs to have adaptation of the legislative framework. Foster stakeholders collaboration. That was the idea of this workshop. We need to have a better coordination between landowner, shepherds, municipality, and the technical department, like Department of Forests, but also Department of Agriculture, that could be also supporting in terms of subsidies. There is also the environmental organization that need to be involved to better protect and support local biodiversity, meaning that we want to go from overgrazing in some area, and even like a protected area, to a controlled grazing. So we need specific recommendation to have this implemented in the right way. Attract and train shepherd, that's a key issue also, to accompany them to implement this controlled grazing. And we see actually the shepherd as firefighters, preventive firefighters. So it's a very important stakeholder in this landscape resilience. And the last but not least, increase public awareness on land management to have a better understanding on why we need to better manage this dry vegetation in land management, and how it's the responsibility of each landowner that could be supported also by adequate practices, adequate framework, and adequate policies. So the last activity we want to highlight for Cyprus is the methodology activity. We have been doing a few participative workshops inside the framework of the Summit Fire project, and we specially design and implement a sales game on fire management. So the goal was to discover integrated fire management, but it was also to build up strategies and action to better protect people, infrastructures, and the natural assets. So this work has been done under the auspices of the Ministry of Agriculture, Rural Development and Environment, which was one more factor to have the output of this work sustained by the different stakeholders. So Pyropolis, it's a serious game which has been developed on the base of Pyroton, which is a serious game for fire management, integrated fire management, developed by Wageningen University. The goal of the way we implemented it is there's two. First one is share a better understanding of stakeholders' role and responsibilities. So to have understanding on what the other one is doing, going in its shoes. And the second one is to identify and discuss the adequate practices to improve the wildfire management. We did a fact sheet on 4 pages, which is available on this link if you want more detail on this activity. I'm going to present it quickly. So the mission of the game is to develop measures and strategies to reduce risk of wildfire for the next 5 years in Pyroton, which is represented in this map you have on the screen. To run your mission, you have a team. There is the mayor of Pyropolis, the chief of the fire service, the director of the Department of Forests, commander of civil defense, a representative of the farmers and breeders, and a representative of environmental NGOs and volunteer organizations. So you have 6 roles. Ideally, you should have like 6 tables of community. So the game needs around 40 people to be run. So the first step of the game is meeting by role. So each person have a role. Ideally, we encourage people to not to take the role in their real life, yeah, because the goal is to understand better the roles of the other one. So in this first step, we meet by roles, meaning around the table it will be only mayors, only chief of the command forces, and then looking to what are the main stakes for each role and what are the objectives, strategy for each actor. After this first step, we move from one table to another one and we meet by community. What do we mean by community? Meaning in the community, you will have one person of each role that we presented upon. And then you are starting really to define what is your strategy and what will be the action you will put in place to have like a integrated fire management. What are the potential barriers that you may identify and what is like your strategy of communication. To implement this, of course, we have like a lyric which is going with it. You have for each role a description of the role. You have a description of the situation at the beginning, and then you have inject, which are basically wildfires, starting to also have this discussion going on during the emergency. And last but not least will be the final restitution by the different team, by different community, where it will be the equation to share. So how you coordinate between each other, what did you learn on the role of the different stakeholders, but then it's also the occasion to identify what are the key actions that should be put in place to implement an integrated fire management strategy in Cyprus.
Of course, after you run this pure police sales game, when you get the feedback of the different communities presenting their strategy on key action they implemented, you won't get integrated fire management strategy ready. But for us, it has been a very useful workshop, and we get inputs from the different participants to build up an integrated fire management strategy. It has been the occasion also that they could exchange between themselves the different roles and a better understanding on what is a fire management strategy and why do we need this strategy in Cyprus. I will briefly present you a few points of this draft strategy using the UCPM assessment framework, and I will focus on planning first. So key action, implement forest management plan, adequate forest management plan, improve community and preparedness and resilience, and ensure better land planning and define strategic management area. This is a key concept that has been really emphasized by the different participants. On prevention, we had promote and sustain vegetation management techniques, developing control grazing in strategic area, and assessing the potential use of prescribed fire. So these are the practice that we present you upon because that's the one that will rise out of the last workshop. Thank you for following this video up to the end. I hope you have been interested by our feedback on our experience. There is another video which is available on the context of Cyprus, on agriculture, on agroforestry. You have an introductive also video on the context if you didn't have the chance to watch it. And we have also feedback from different LandLab, from different countries involved in ResAlliance that we invite you to look also. And there is also on the website of ResAlliance a few documents, there are a lot of best practices which have been documented, and we invite you to have a look to this. And for any question or if you want to be part of this change in Cyprus, please contact us. Thank you.